Okay. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, everyone. Um, Welcome to another lecture. Today, inshallah, the topic that I'm going to discuss is going to be, today's topic is going to be about self-discipline and what we mean by that. And so let's get started. But before we begin, I just wanted to let you know this is going to be a multi-part lecture, meaning today I'm going to do two parts. And then the next lecture, I'm going to do another two parts, and then the next lecture after that, I'll do another two parts regarding self-discipline. So we will go into this, the concept of discipline, etc. But today is just going to be two parts because if I were to do all 6 parts today, it'll take like 3 hours, and we don't have that much time. So let's get started. Before we begin, I just wanted to share a piece of poetry from Allama Iqbal in his book Bale Jibreel. For the children listening, I will translate it in just a second for the adults who know Urdu. It goes as follows. वो फरेब खुर्दशाही के पला हो करगसों में उसे क्या खबर के क्या है राहो रस्म शाहबाजी. Roughly translated, it means that deceived eagle, that deceived falcon, who has been raised alongside vultures, How would he come to know what it takes to be a falcon, or how would he know the ways and means of falconry? Roughly translated, that's what it means. Now, what does that mean and how does it apply to our lecture? Inshallah, I will discuss this piece of poetry at the end of lecture 3, which is today's lecture 1. The next week is going to be lecture 2, and the week after that is going to be lecture 3. At the end of it all, I will discuss why I chose this piece of poetry and why I introduced this, but just to keep this in the back of your mind. One more time. वो फरेब खुर्द शाही के पला हो कर गसों में उसे क्या खबर के क्या है रहो रस्म शाहबाजी. He, or that deceived falcon who has been raised with vultures, how would he know what it takes to be a falcon? How would he know the ways and means of falconry? That's what it translates into roughly. So, inshallah, we will discuss this at the last lecture. Okay. So what is on the agenda today? Today we're going to be going over self-discipline, and this is going to be along the same theme as we've discussed in the previous lectures. What was the theme of our previous lectures? The theme of our previous lectures is tarbiyah, or educating and raising our children well. And this talk is going to be along the same lines. But when I started to develop this talk, one thing I found was that this topic, I found myself lacking in this when I started preparing this lecture. Meaning, even though I have a good amount of self-discipline, I found myself severely lacking in the level of self-discipline Islam expects of me and what I have in my personal life. So I thought to myself, am I even qualified to speak on this subject? Meaning, who am I to say, or who am I to preach self-discipline to others when I lack it in my own life? Right? Good question. Very good question. It turns out that a reminder benefits the believer, and I'm hoping that this talk will be and is and has been while I was preparing it, this advice first and foremost to myself, and therefore the parents listening should also take this advice first and foremost for themselves, and then apply it toward their children. Then apply it for their children, and then expect their children to have self-discipline. The parents must inculcate this characteristic in their lives. On the agenda today, we're going to talk about self-discipline and its importance for yourselves and your children. And in today's lecture, we're going to be talking about 2 types of discipline. Discipline in thought, which is going to be in today's lecture, and discipline in time management. The other 4 subjects, diet, sleep, body, money, meaning discipline in your diet, and your eating habits, discipline in your sleep and your sleeping habits, discipline in your body, your exercising, and discipline, financial discipline, etc. All those are going to be separate topics. And let me go ahead and mute everybody again for some reason. Yeah, okay. Okay. What is self-discipline? Self-discipline is the ability to control one's feelings, one's own emotions, one's own desires and weaknesses, to overcome those desires and weaknesses, and the ability to pursue what one thinks is right, what one believes to be right, despite temptations to abandon it. Just a quick Google search. This is a concise definition of what I found in the English language of what is self-discipline. Over the course of time, what I've found is that, and especially when I read the times and the stories of the Sahaba, the stories of the prophets, etc., it appears that we have lost this art of self-discipline. That the individuals who we are supposed to model ourselves, the prophets, the Sahaba, etc., they were extremely self-disciplined, extremely well-disciplined people. But over time, over the course of time, we as Muslims have lost this art. We have lost the art of self-discipline. We have lost this amongst ourselves, amongst our children. We must attempt to resurrect this characteristics amongst ourselves and our children. It is a lost art, yes. We do not pray at night as much as our ancestors used to. We do not fast as much as our ancestors used to. We do not think positively like our ancestors used to. We do not engage in self-discipline like our ancestors used to. We are an undisciplined people. Because we don't teach this to ourselves, we do not teach this to our children, we have to attempt to resurrect this characteristic amongst ourselves and our children, or we risk being left behind. Another thing that I had concerns about when I was preparing this lecture was that, am I criticizing my parents when I'm preparing this lecture, that they did not discipline me or they did not introduce me to self-discipline? And this is not a criticism of my parents. I love my parents very much. And they did a wonderful job in raising me. However, the difficult truth remains that I do not see the level of self-discipline that Islam expects of us in our minds, in our bodies, in our households. It's just not there. So we have to attempt to resurrect this characteristic amongst ourselves and our children. And hopefully, by the end of this series of lectures, you will understand how to resurrect self-discipline in yourselves and your children and why it is important. If we do not resurrect self-discipline, if we do not promote self-discipline, if we do not inculcate self-discipline in our children, we endanger our children. We are endangering our children of being reduced to some very basic pursuits. Meaning, if we do not inculcate this self-discipline, the most or the greatest ambition that the average person has, we are in danger of reducing our children to this ambition and this ambition only. These ambitions only. And what are the greatest ambition the average person has, right? What is it that an average person expects or wants out of life? And they are as follows: to have food, to be able to eat, to have a roof over their head, to have a job, to be employed, to have a family, and finally to be left alone in peace. This is the greatest ambition that the average person has, and I will introduce another piece of poetry. for the adults. क्या कहें अहबाब क्या कारे नुमाया कर गए, बीए किया नौकर हुए पेंशन मिली और मर गए. Is that what you want for yourselves and your children? Do you just want to graduate school, get married, get a job, die? Is that the sum total of your ambition? And is that what you want to transfer to your children? And is that the sum total of ambition that Islam expects from us? Hopefully, in these lectures, I will let you know what it takes to become self-disciplined, how to strive for greatness, and how to inculcate this into our lives. In Surah Yusuf, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, and I will recite this and then I will translate it for you. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وما أبرئ نفسي إن النفس لأمارة بالسوء إلا ما رحم ربي إن ربي غفور رحيم. Translated as follows. And I do not acquit myself. Indeed, the soul, the nafs, the self, is persistent enjoiner of evil, except for those upon whom my Lord has mercy. Indeed, my Lord is most forgiving, most merciful. Now, what does this mean? That if left to our devices, without self-discipline, if left to our own thoughts, if left without direction, by default, our selves, our baser instincts will do evil, will enjoin evil upon us. It is incumbent upon us to fight this inner tendency of ourselves. By default, your base instincts, your baser self, your baser desires will enjoin evil for you. Whatever it tells you to do will likely be to your detriment. What will it tell you to do? It will tell you to eat too much. It'll tell you to oversleep. It'll tell you to be lazy. That'll tell you to take shortcuts in life. It'll tell you not to work hard. Eventually, these tendencies that you have amongst yourselves, unless you fight them, and by the mercy of Allah, you fight them, unless you fight them, you will be at a loss. Therefore, understand that yourself, your inner tendencies of laziness, of all the evil that the self enjoins upon itself, those tendencies have to be fought. And you have to teach your children how to fight those tendencies as well. Otherwise, they will be at a loss as well. First topic. Among the types of discipline that we talked about in the agenda slide, what were the 6 types of discipline that I was going to discuss? It was discipline in thought, discipline in time, discipline in sleep, discipline in diet, discipline in body, and discipline in the finances, or discipline in money. Those were the 6 types of disciplines that I was going to talk about in this series of lectures. And today, first, the discipline that I'm going to talk about is the discipline in thought, meaning positive thinking. Many of us are guilty of this, not because we are bad parents, but simply because of the love we have for our children. We tend to shield our children from the harsh realities of this life. Meaning, we shield them from the for a certain age, and perhaps at a certain age it's a good thing. We shield them from the reality of death and its finality. We shield them from the reality of suffering and what it can do to them. However, you should not be shielding your children from the harsh realities of life. You should be exposing them slowly but surely to let them know that this life is going to be a test. This life is going to be hard, and you have to teach them. You have to teach them how to deal with the negatives that are going to come their way in their lives. You do not do them any favors. And by the way, we do not do ourselves any favors by closing our eyes, closing our ears, and by shielding ourselves from the harsh and difficult realities of life. Meaning, throughout your lives, throughout your children's lives, you will experience loss, you will experience pain, you will experience harshness in life. That's simply the fact of the matter. I will prove it from the Quran in just a second. But anybody who has lived to any age beyond majority will tell you life is hard. Sometimes things don't work out the way you want them to. Sometimes there is pain. Sometimes we get sick. Sometimes we lose. Sometimes we die. That is the reality of the human condition, right? Now tell me this. This is an exercise that I want you to do for yourself and for your children. Some parents, I hope this never happens to any parent. What a difficult thing. But some parents in their lives lose their children. Meaning their children pass away while the parents are alive. What a terrible, terrible loss. How difficult must that be for a parent to bear? Right? I sincerely and honestly hope anybody who is listening, you never have to bury your children. They are your legacy, they are your love, they are your everything. I hope you never have to bury your legacy. I hope you never have to bury your children. But answer me this. In your heart of hearts, you hope, you pray that you never have to bury your children. But have you prepared your children to bury you? One of two things must be true. Either your children will die in your lifetime, or you will die in your children's lifetime. It can't work any other way. Have you prepared your children for a life without you? Have you readied them for that ultimate loss that they are likely going to experience? Your loss, the loss of a parent. In the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أم حسبتم أن تدخلوا الجنة ولما يأتكم مثل الذين خلوا من قبلكم مستهم البأساء والضراء وزلزلوا حتى يقول الرسول والذين آمنوا معه متى نصر الله ألا إن نصر الله قريب. Translated, or do you think that you will enter paradise while such trials and tribulations has not come to you as those who come before you or those who passed away before you? They were touched by poverty and hardship and were shaken until even their messenger and those who believed with him said, when will the help of Allah come. Unquestionably, the help of Allah is near. In this verse of Surah Al-Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is reminding us that do we think that we will enter paradise willy-nilly just by saying? We will be tried just like the people who were tried before us. We will experience loss, we will experience pain, we will experience suffering. In fact, the people who came before us were tried so harsh, so severely that even the messengers, the people who believed, even they started to exclaim, where is the help of Allah? When will the help of Allah come? Indeed, the help of Allah is near. Understand that if you are alive, suffering will be there. Have you prepared your children with positive thinking and discipline and thought to deal with the losses that are going to come their way? Discipline and thought. You and your children, by the virtue of the fact that we are living in the West, will experience marginalization just because you are Muslim. Sorry, I cannot put it any more rosy. I cannot put it any better. Your children will be fed a constant negative stream of propaganda about Islam. That they themselves as Muslims are worthless, or Islam is worthless, or because of who they are, they're worthless. You and your children through your lives will experience loss, will experience difficulty. Now, among all of this, right? What am I saying? I keep saying about the negatives that are going to come your way. I just continue to talk about the negatives. But what is the point of all of this? Do you practice positive thinking? Do you practice what the Quran says about loss and dealing with loss? Do you regularly read the Quran and gain strength from the hadith of our Prophet? Do you dose yourselves and your children with a constant stream of positive thinking that will help you deal with this loss? If you don't, your children and yourselves are in for a rough ride. This life isn't meant to be heaven. There is going to be no heaven on earth. And remember, I dedicated an entire lecture on this positive thinking. We talked about in Surah Al-Duha. What did we talk about? What was the positive thinking that we talked about in that lecture? We talked about how whether it's day or night, and day and night are witness to this fact that despite our circumstances, no matter how bad it gets, there are going to be bleak times, there are going to be bad times, there are going to be dark nights, there are going to be bright days. It doesn't matter what time it is, whether it's good times or bad times. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not hate you. He has not abandoned you. Only what is later is better than what is before. Meaning, one of the basic pieces of positive thinking that we must inculcate in ourselves and our children is that our tomorrow, no matter what, will be better than our today. And that is the condition of a mu'min. That is the condition of a believer. Without this positive thinking, without this discipline in thought, and the entire Quran and the corpus of hadith is full of positive thinking, you and your children will have difficulty in dealing with the negatives that are going to come your way in your life. Be sure to inculcate positive thinking in your children. Read the Quran. Read the hadith of our Prophet. What does our Prophet say regarding loss? He said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that the matter of the believer is good, is strange and good, which is, if he experiences loss, he is patient, and that is good for him. And if he has benefited or he gains any benefit, he thanks Allah, and that is good for him. Meaning, no matter what happens to a Muslim, whether it's something loss or a benefit, if he is experiences loss, he is patient and it is good for him. And if he experiences some benefit, he is thankful and it is good for him. Without this positive thinking, without this discipline and thought, it will be difficult for you and your children to navigate the rest of your lives. Hopefully, by my exhortation, you will start to read the Quran and not just read it, just recite it, but to engage with it. How the Quran wants you to change your thinking patterns in the positive direction. The next discipline that I'm going to talk about today, and this is going to be the second type of discipline that I'm going to talk about today, and this is going to take us to the end of today's lecture. When I started preparing this lecture, it turned out if I were to do all 6 types of discipline in just one lecture, it'll take too long. The second type of discipline that I'm going to talk about today is discipline in time and managing our time. It's a question for you. It's a question for your children. Do you practice discipline in time? Now, what does Islam expect of us? With the exception of the first pillar, which is to bear witness that there is no deity worthy of worship except Allah, and that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam is his prophet. With the exception of that pillar, because it's so urgent, there is no specified time for it. You have to do it right now. If a non-Muslim wants to accept Islam, he better do it now. There is no specified time. Now is the time. But the rest of them, the 4 of the 5 pillars, have specified times, and it must be done. They must be done on time. The salah is done at a particular time, 5 times a day. Zakat is only mandatory once a year, once the time upon which that wealth has passed and the wealth has exceeded a certain amount. Siyam or fasting is done at the time of Ramadan, from the sunrise to sunset at a specified time, even during that time. You don't decide when it's going to be, when you're going to fast. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tell you this is the time. All of the pillars of Islam, with the exception of the first, and which is characterized by urgency, have specified times. We have to pray on time. We have to fast on time. We have to give zakat on time. We have to do hajj on time. It is on a specific day. It is on a specific time. It is on a specific month. It is at a specific area. Question: despite the fact that Islam expects so much commitment from us in terms of our time, in terms of our worship, are we not constantly late in our commitments? For example, very recently, I'll give you examples from your own lives. If you invite someone, or if someone invites you to their house at a particular time, do you show up in time? Or are you typically late? Or are you quote unquote fashionably late? This is a problem that permeates our entire community. It is as if no Muslim wedding can ever begin or end on time. Ever. That almost never happens. We cannot expect that our deen places so much emphasis on time management that the very basic pillar after the first pillar, we must pray on time. First lesson, always pray on time. But then that discipline does not permeate through the rest of our lives. That discipline in time, if we are going to pray on time, then we had better make sure that we get to work on time, that we get to school on time, that if somebody invited us to their house, we get there on time, we leave on time. In Sahih Bukhari, our Prophet it is narrated that our Prophet said, there are 2 blessings which many people lose. And which are those 2 blessings? Good health and free time for doing good. Are we utilizing our time in the best way? Are we disciplined about our times, or are we undisciplined? This surah is one of my favorite surah of the Quran, which is Surah Al-Asr. And this surah, according to Imam al-Shafi'i has said that if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had revealed no surah except for this surah in the Quran, it would have been sufficient as evidence against mankind that this is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ. Translated, it means, by the time of Asr, indeed mankind is in a constant and perpetual state of loss, except those who believed and did righteous deeds and enjoined the truth and enjoined patience. Meaning that time is witness. And every day we see this in our lives, in the lives of others. Mankind wastes time. And because mankind wastes time, it is going to be in a state of loss. It is going to be losing. It is in a perpetual, mankind is going to be in a perpetual state of loss. Meaning, if you don't manage your time, if you abuse time, you will be in a state of loss. Here's the exception to that rule. Except if you believe and do good deeds. What is the good deed? You had better taken care of your time. What is given to you, you had better taken care of that time and did good deed in those times and enjoyed the truth and enjoyed patience upon the truth. This is the meaning of Surah Al-Asr. So discipline in time. How can we inculcate discipline in time amongst ourselves and our children? Number one, pray on time and enjoin your children. Make sure that they also pray on time. Number two, keep your commitments. If you make a promise to be at a particular place on time, whether it be school, whether it be at somebody's house, whether it be at a wedding, whether it be at the masjid, whether it be anywhere, make sure you keep those commitments and times and make sure you are not late. And by the way, if you don't do this, your children will take after you. If you're constantly late, if you don't keep your commitments, if you don't keep your promises, your children will be late. Your children will abuse time. Your children will be lazy. Do you really expect that if you yourselves don't take care of time and if you're undisciplined about time, that your children will somehow become these incredible creatures who are just somehow disciplined about time? They'll learn from you. You cannot expect mangoes to grow on a palm tree. That's just not going to happen. Whatever you sow is what you will reap. If you sow undisciplined time management in your children, in yourselves, that is what you're going to reap. They're going to lose in life. And finally, use the time that you have for beneficial activities. And I'm glad people are listening to this. This is one of the beneficial activities, right? One of the beneficial activities is what? Learning the deen. Making sure we understand what the deen expects from us. But what are some of the other activities that you can do? I could have this list could have gone long, but I just wanted to give you some examples. Okay, have fun with your family. Do good things. Do good activities with your families. Learn the deen. Maybe volunteer at your local masjid. Maybe volunteer at your local soup kitchen. Maybe volunteer your time for the less fortunate. Take your children with you so that they will see what some people are suffering, how homelessness affects some people. Just they will understand and appreciate the importance of time and also the importance of what they have in their lives. I could have filled this whole page, this entire lecture, with the list of activities that you could do with your time. But if you're undisciplined about your time, you will never be able to make time for these activities. Make sure you're disciplined about time. Whoops. Well, I opened the wrong. Whoops. I think I opened the wrong PowerPoint presentation. Yeah, I think I did. Yeah, it was supposed to be this PowerPoint presentation. Let me go back from there. Okay. In conclusion, because the matter of discipline in diet and discipline in sleep, etc., that's going to be in a future in a future lecture. Today we talked about discipline, what is discipline, and its importance, the importance of self-discipline. We also talked about how to inculcate discipline in yourselves in thought, in our thought processes, thinking positive, and in our time, in managing our time. And we talked about some tips on how to encourage discipline in yourselves and your children. Next week's topic are going to be regarding discipline in your diet, what Islam expects from us when we eat, how we eat, what we eat, and what Islam expects of us when and how we sleep. That's going to be next week's topic. Jazakallah khair for watching. Inshallah, I will start this. I will stop it here and I will open up the floor for questioning. Subhanak Allahumma wa bihamdika wa ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Let me exit this and go to manage participants and let me unmute everybody. And if somebody wants to go back onto mute, you can mute the lecture now. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, now is the time to talk. Okay, sounds like
अस्सलाम वालेकुम फैसल बेटा।
वालेकुम सलाम खाला।
मैं कहती हूँ बच्चों को किस तरह से ये लोग अपना टाइम मैनेज करें और ये लोग जितना बैठ के जो मूवियां देखते हैं ना, इस पे जरा बेटा कुछ समझा दो कि ये ना जरा टीवी अपना जो टाइम है ना, जो ये लोग कंप्यूटर पे सिर्फ कुछ काम की बात नहीं कर रहे होते, सिर्फ सीरीज पे सीरीज, एक सीरीज आ गई दूसरी सीरीज आ गई, उस पे वो वॉच करते जा रहे थे। जरा इनको समझा दो बेटा ये।
अच्छा, so tell me Khala, I don't want to put you on the spot, but you have placed yourself on the spot. Is there a TV in your house?
हाँ है तो सही। तो टीवी नहीं है, वो है क्या है, आपके सबके हाथों में कंप्यूटर आ गया बेटा, लैपटॉप है, वो नहीं है तो वो है क्या, इनकी डिवाइसेस है।
हाँ, बात मानने की खाला, ठीक है। मैं I don't want to put you on the spot, लेकिन honestly आपने क्योंकि publicly सवाल पूछा तो जवाब भी publicly ही देना पड़ेगा। My apologies, ठीक है।
हाँ ठीक है, कोई बात नहीं बेटा, हाँ बताओ और क्या।
माफी चाहता हूँ। अगर आप खुद आपके यहाँ टेलीविजन है तो फिर आप बच्चों से एक्सपेक्ट नहीं कर सकते। बिल्कुल अनफेयर बात है कि आप अपने घर में टीवी रखें।
ये सारे डिवाइसेस हम ले लें, इनका लैपटॉप ले लें इनसे।
नहीं, आप बच्चों से क्यों एक्सपेक्ट करते हैं जबकि आप खुद नहीं कर सकते?
नहीं बेटा, मैं तो टीवी वॉच नहीं करती, इनसे पूछ लो।
आप रखा हुआ है,
लेकिन ये लोग टीवी वॉच नहीं करते, लेकिन अपने कंप्यूटर पे सब कुछ वॉच करते हैं जो टीवी के थ्रू आता है।
अच्छा ठीक है। अगर आप अगर आपने ये इस मामले में करना है ना, तो फर्स्ट आपने अपने आप से शुरू करना है। और सबसे पहले जो अपने आप ने शुरू करना है, जिसके बगैर कोई आजकल कोई आदमी शरीफ आदमी ने शुमार किया जाता। मेरे घर में टीवी है, लेकिन मैंने केबल कटवा दिया, नो केबल, ठीक है। अगर कुछ देखना है, कोई लेक्चर सुनना है, मैं टीवी पे देख सकता हूँ। टीवी पे मुझे अगर कोई स्पोर्ट्स प्रोग्राम देखना है, मैं देख सकता हूँ। लेकिन मैंने केबल कटवा दिया है। आजकल कोई शरीफ आदमी शुमार हो सकता है बगैर टीवी के, बगैर केबल के? क्या आपके घर में केबल लगा हुआ है?
हाँ, केबल लगा हुआ है।
तो आप बच्चों से एक्सपेक्ट मत करें, निरी बेवकूफी है कि हम खुद नहीं करते और बच्चों से कहते हैं ना करो।
देखो
कितने
बेटा, मैं तो ना मैं टीवी वॉच करती हूँ ना नदीम टीवी वॉच करते हैं।
तो बताएं आप
ठीक है ना?
कितने पैसे दे रही हैं महीने के टीवी के? यही मैं कह रहा हूँ खाला, मैं माफी चाहता हूँ,
हाँ,
आपने
नहीं
पब्लिकली सवाल पूछा तो जवाब पब्लिकली देना पड़ेगा।
बेटा, मैं ये नहीं कहती। देखो बेटे, मैं चाह रही हूँ तुम इनको समझाओ कि इनके पास जो डिवाइसेस हैं वो यूज करने के लिए, अब्यूज के लिए नहीं है।
अच्छा ठीक है,
ये लोग अब्यूज करते हैं उन चीजों का,
ठीक है, मैं
अपने टाइम का अब्यूज कर रहे हैं,
ठीक है,
और हमारी
मैं
तो
इनको
बात सुनते नहीं है।
मैं इनको समझा देता हूँ, नो प्रॉब्लम। लेकिन आप भी सुनने खाला,
हाँ,
कॉमकास्ट या जिसको भी आप कॉल करें और जो चैनल्स है वो कटवाएं।
अच्छा
इंटरनेट तो जरूरी है,
ठीक है, इंटरनेट रहने दो, चैनल कटवा दो सारे।
चैनल कटवा दें, आपके मंथली पैसे भी बचेंगे और आपने कम से कम वो बुनियादी स्टेप ले लिया जिसकी बुनियाद पे आप खड़ी होके ये कह सकें कि तुम ये काम ना करो।
ठीक है।
ठीक है, ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक तरह का निफाक है कि आप तो खुद तो दबा के महीने के पैसे दे रहे हैं कि एनबीसी आ रहा है घर में, बीबीसी आ रहा है घर में, ये भी आ रहा है, वो भी आ रहा है, टीवी भी रखा हुआ है। नहीं जी नहीं, बच्चे टीवी ज्यादा देखते हैं। ओ भाई, अपने गिरबान में पहले झांको। नंबर 2, नाउ आफ्टर, उसके बाद विद चिल्ड्रन, यू आर एब्सोल्युटली राइट। उसके ऊपर लगे रहना, उसके ऊपर बार बार अपने आप को ये क्या नाम है, मूवी पे मूवी देखना, ये क्या नाम है, बगैर उसके, this listless type of activity, I call these listless activities। ठीक है, कि आपको और कोई काम ही नहीं है, आप लगातार बिंज वॉच किए जा रहे हैं, टीवी देखे जा रहे हैं, देखे जा रहे हैं, इसके अलावा आपको कुछ करने को ही नहीं है। उससे होगा ये नंबर 1 सबसे, जो चिल्ड्रन जो क्या नाम है, it's very difficult to get through them from the Islamic perspective, तो मैं उनको secular perspective से बता दूं। ठीक है, overwatching TV is highly positively correlated to negative self-worth and negative wealth। मतलब ये कि if you watch a lot of TV, don't expect to be rich and don't expect to be happy। One more time, if you do a lot of TV watching, if you do a lot of unnecessary internet surfing, TV watching, and binging, don't expect, and this is, I'm not even talking from a Islamic perspective anymore. For now, abhi to maine usko thodi der ke liye daba diya because for some reason it doesn't get through. Let's not even talk about that. It's a foregone conclusion that people who watch more than 1 or 2 hours, more than an hour of television a day, or 5 to 7 hours of television in a week, overall, they're not wealthy individuals, meaning they're poor. And overall, they're not healthy individuals, meaning they're sickly. And overall, they are not happy individuals, meaning they're depressed. Children, if you want to succeed in life, you think that, Razia Khala or your parents or whatever are somehow your enemy, thinking that, yeah, hey, don't overdo this, don't be constantly on this, on that device or this device, etc. Understand, you don't have to listen. If you don't listen to them, that's fine. Eventually, you're going to be adults, you're going to be managing and responsible for your own lives. But don't come to your children, don't come back to your parents complaining, I'm not happy, I'm listless, I'm not wealthy, I'm sickly, etc. These things are going to happen to you if you continue to waste your time on your devices. And parents, don't expect from your children what you do not expect from yourselves. Some parents listening, you know what they do? If it's not American shows, it's Pakistani dramas. Right? 12 episodes, 22 episodes, 42 episodes of this drama, that drama, constantly feeding themselves this stuff. But you know what they expect of their children? Oh, get off the device. No, you get off the TV. It's harsh advice, but I am going to be fair whenever somebody asks me these questions. If somebody asks me a question in open, I'm going to answer that question in open. Okay? Khala, my apologies one more time. I don't want to put you on blast.
नहीं बेटा, मैं जाहिर है on my part हम लोगों ने तो अपने पेरेंट्स से जो लर्न किया, या क्योंकि हमारे जमाने में तो इतना टीवी वगैरह ये सब कुछ होता नहीं था, तो इसलिए हम लोगों को तो इतनी आदत नहीं है कि जैसे हम अगर टीवी नहीं वॉच करेंगे तो जिंदा नहीं रहेंगे, या फलानी एपिसोड वॉच नहीं करेंगे तो हम जिंदा नहीं रहेंगे. हमें कोई इस तरह की डिजायर नहीं होती. दूसरी बात ये कि हमारे पास तो इतनी जिम्मेदारियां इतनी होती हैं कि हम अपना करते रहते. लेकिन उन डिवाइसेस से हटने के बाद भी जब इनको कोई काम कहा जाता है या कुछ कहा जाता है तो ये ऐसे हो जाते हैं, अपने आप को इतना सेल्फ पिटी का शिकार कर लेते हैं जैसे हमारे पेरेंट्स से ज्यादा कोई जाबिर और कोई वो जो है ना, हम पे जुल्म करने वाला कोई नहीं है. छोटा सा कोई काम कह दो, वो फिर देखो जरा.
ये भी आप लोगों को आहिस्ता आहिस्ता करके इनके अंदर इनकलकेट करना पड़ेगा. ठीक है, ये आप लोगों से शुरू में नफरत करेंगे, करें, ठीक है. अगर आपने इनसे कहा कि फलाना काम तुमने करना है, नहीं तो फोन इधर करो, कंप्यूटर इधर करो, लैपटॉप इधर करो, चीखेंगे, रोएंगे, बा 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 करेंगे. ठीक है. आमतौर पे पेरेंट्स जो हैं अपने बच्चों के बारे में इतने शफीक, इतने मेहरबान होते हैं कि वो अपने बच्चों पर जुल्म करते हैं, क्योंकि बच्चा आपसे तंग आ जाता है कि नहीं मेरे पेरेंट्स तो मुझे ये नहीं करने देते, वो नहीं करने देते. आपसे basically what the children do, they emotionally blackmail you, right? आपसे तंग हो जाएगी, यूं करके रूठ जाएंगे, और क्योंकि आपके बच्चों से बेतहाशा मोहब्बत है, आप उनकी बातों में एग्री कर जाएंगे. ठीक है. You will give in to their demands. This kind of parenting, do you really think it will lead to discipline? No. अगर मैंने ये काम कह दिया क्योंकि मैं पेरेंट हूं तो ये काम होगा नहीं. तेरा फोन भी मेरे पास, तेरा आईपैड भी मेरे पास, तेरी गाड़ी भी मेरे पास, तेरा सब कुछ मेरे पास. खबरदार, जो मेरी एक चीज होती है which is called, it's still love, it's called tough love. ठीक है. अल्लाह मेरी अम्मी को 1000 जज़ा दे, जज़ाए खैर दे. बचपन में मुझे उन्होंने इसी तरह किया, और अब मैं उनके इस कदर शुक्रगुजार हूं कि मैं कह नहीं सकता. ठीक है. उन्होंने कहा कि पढ़ाई इस वक्त होगी, मुकम्मल पढ़ाई होगी, उसके बगैर ना टीवी, ना बाहर जाके खेलना, ना कुछ. बुरा तो मुझे बहुत लगता था, लेकिन पढ़ना पड़ता था, चाहे कुछ भी कर लूं मैं. पेरेंट्स वर इन चार्ज ऑफ मी. ठीक है. अगर वो आपकी बात नहीं मानते आपसे कि हम यूं हैं तो वो हैं, तो उस वक्त आपने अपने दिल के ऊपर रहम को नहीं आने देना है. इनकी तो ऐसी की तैसी.
बेटे तो हम इनसे चीजें छीनते हैं या वो करते हैं तो फिर ये समझते हैं कि ये हमसे लव नहीं करते, फिर ये डिप्रेशन में चले जाते हैं, फिर ये पता नहीं क्या क्या सोचने लगते हैं. ये मतलब कि
ये खाला, ये आपकी खाम ख्याली है, बिल्कुल खाम ख्याली है. ये आप जिसे कहना चाहिए ना कि it's excuses, it's reasons that you're giving yourself in order to give in to your children. ठीक है. You are the parent, you know best. एक वक्त आएगा कि वाकई ये कहेंगे क्या बकवास है ये. हो सकता है आपसे I don't like you mom, I hate you mom, and गुस्सा भी करें. ठीक है, करें. ठीक है. क्या नाम है, लिस्टलेस हो जाए, ठीक है, ये हो जाए, लेकिन उस वजह से आप उनको उस भट्टी में नहीं झोंक सकते, क्योंकि फिर आपसे पूछा जाएगा भाई अगर तुझे तो पता था कि ये काम उसके लिए सही नहीं है, उसको मना करते. और वाकई ऐसा होगा, मेरी बात मान लें, ऐसा होगा. हो सकता है आपके बच्चे आपसे नफरत करें, हो सकता है आपके बच्चे टेम्पररी आपसे कहें अजीब जाबिर मां है, अजीब मुसीबत है, लेकिन आज मैं पर्सनली इस बात पे गवाह हूं कि अगर मेरी माँ ने मेरे साथ ऐसा ना किया होता तो मैं पता नहीं कहां होता. आज मैं कुछ भी हूं अपनी माँ के डिसिप्लिन की वजह से हूं. अगर मेरी माँ उस वक्त मुझसे डर के मुझे हर वक्त खेलने की इजाजत दे देती, हर वो काम करने की इजाजत देती थी जो कि बचपन में मैं करना चाहता था, जो बचपना मेरे ऊपर हावी था, जिसको हमने अभी हमने कुरान में पढ़ा कि बाय डिफॉल्ट हर नफ्स अपने लिए अपने ऊपर जुल्म करना चाहता है. अगर मेरी माँ मुझे वो करने की इजाजत दे देती تو میری ماں نہ ہوتی, میری ظالم دشمن ہوتی. یہ بات ہمیں اپنے اندر اچھی طرح واضح طور پر سمجھنی پڑے گی کہ بعض دفعہ in order to be a parent, باپ یا ماں ہونے کے لیے آپ کو اپنے بچوں سے وہ کام کرنا پڑتا ہے جو کہ شاید ان کو پسند نہ آئے. کوئی بات نہیں, you know best. ٹھیک ہے. اس کے بعد اب آپ نے اس معاملے سے نہیں ڈرنا کہ یہ آیا یہ because those are all excuses کہ یہ ڈپریسڈ ہو جائیں گے, یہ ہم سے نفرت کریں گے, یہ سمجھے گا کہ ہم ان سے پیار نہیں کرتے. نہ, کچھ نہیں ہوگا. میں اس بات کا گواہ ہوں, اور تمام وہ لوگ جو کہ بڑے ہوئے they are well adjusted adults, وہ ہمیشہ یہی بتاتے ہیں کہ اللہ کا بڑا کرم ہے کہ ہمارے ماں باپ نے ہم پر تھوڑی سختی کر لی. ورنہ جن لوگوں کے اوپر ان کے ماں باپ نے پڑھائی کے معاملے میں, اچھے ہیبٹس کے معاملے میں, اٹھنے بیٹھنے کے معاملے میں, سونے کھانے پینے کے معاملے میں ان پر سختی نہیں کی, وہ آج کہاں پر ہیں؟ میں جتنے لوگوں کو دیکھتا ہوں کہ وہ آج کہاں پر ہیں, وہ بیچارے خسارے میں ہی ہیں. وہ ان کے ماں باپ نے ان پر ظلم کیا. ٹھیک ہے خالہ, یہ آپ کو بات ماننی پڑے گی کہ you can't have it both ways. آپ دونوں بات نہیں کر سکتے. یا تو آپ کو اپنے بچوں کے ساتھ ڈسپلن رکھنا پڑے گا, یا you're gonna have to, you can either be you're a parent or you can be a friend. You can't be both. ٹھیک ہے, یوں چیچی پاپا کریں گے, کرنے دیں.
اور دوسری بیٹے دیکھو, یہ لوگ جتنی ان کی ایج ہے, میں کہتی ہوں کہ چلو 5 سال کا بچہ, 6 سال کا بچہ, 7 سال کا بچہ, 8 سال کا بچہ ہو, نو دے آر ٹینیجر, دے آر ماشاء اللہ 16, 17, 18. ٹھیک ہے نا. نماز کے لیے نہیں آتے, نماز کے لیے کہنا پڑتا ہے, بار بار کہنا پڑتا ہے, بار بار کہنا پڑتا ہے.
ٹھیک ہے, بار بار کہیں. نہیں مانتی تو پھر اب آپ نے you have to be the parent. اگر مثلاً کمل باجی, عمران بھائی بالکل ٹھیک کرتے ہیں ان کے ساتھ, جب اس کو قرآن کی سب کی پڑھنی ہوتی ہے, جب اس کو اپنا ہوم ورک کرنا ہوتا ہے, جب اس کو کھانا کھانا ہوتا ہے, اگر وہ نہ آئے, there is a negative consequence of him not listening to his parents. یا تو ہم تیرے ویڈیو گیم بند کر دیں گے, یا یہ ہو جائے گا, یہ ہو جائے گا. اچھی طرح سمجھ لے. اور وہ واقعی ایسا ہی کرتے ہیں. اگر وہ آپ کی بات نہیں مان رہے ہیں, ٹھیک ہے, پیار سے سمجھائیں, بہت پیار سے سمجھائیں. آپ اس کے پیرنٹس ہیں, بالکل ان سے محبت کرنی چاہیے. لیکن اگر وہ پھر بھی نہیں مانتے, eventually you have to inculcate that discipline. ان کو ڈسپلن کرنا پڑے گا. اگر وہ پھر بھی نماز کے لیے نہیں آتے, فون ادھر کرو, اگلے 3 دن تک فون نہیں ملے گا. جب 3 دن تک وہ اپنے فون سے علیحدہ رہیں گے, تو اگلی دفعہ جب آپ ان کو نماز کے لیے بلائیں گی, بھاگ کے آئیں گی, بالکل ایک لمحے میں بالکل آپ کے ساتھ آ کے کھڑی ہو جائیں گی. ہو سکتا ہے وہ آپ سے اس وقت چی پا کریں, کرنے دیں. آپ پیرنٹ ہیں, ڈونٹ لیٹ them dictate that. ہوتے وہ کون ہے آپ سے ناراض نہ ہوتے رہے, you know better.
صحیح.
Any other questions, comments, concerns?
نہیں, شکریہ فیصل. بہت اچھا لگا آج کا یہ سیلف ڈسپلن اور ٹائم مینجمنٹ کا, کیونکہ بلال کو ریئلی نیڈس دیٹ کہ اس کو اس میں تھوڑا ورک کرنا ہے. ایوری ایکچولی اس میں ورک کرنا ہے, انکلوڈنگ یو. یس, I'm saying کہ everybody, right?
Okay, mashallah, mashallah. Inshallah, Husna madam, how old are you?
No, I'm not talking to you.
ٹھیک ہے بیٹا.
چلو ٹھیک ہے. سبحانک اللہم و بحمدک, اشہد ان لا الہ الا انت, استغفرک و اتوب الیک. Same time next week, but the week after that. So next week is what? What's the date today? Plus 7 is going to be the 22. 22 is going to be the same time as always, but on the 29th, I have a commitment at 11 a.m. So we're going to have to either talk the night before or Sunday at around 3 p.m., whichever works for you guys. So think about it. Let me know. We don't have to decide right now, but that's all I had for today.
Thank you, Hafiz.
Thank you, Hafiz.
Hafiz, Assalamu alaikum.
Allah Hafiz. Assalamu alaikum.